The following is a selection from the book Metaphysics by Aristotle, presented by ListenToGenius.com, narrated by Michael Kramer. All people naturally desire knowledge. An indication of this is our esteem for the senses. For apart from their use, we esteem them for their own sake, and most of all the sense of sight. Not only with a view to action, but even when no action is contemplated, we prefer sight, generally speaking, to all the other senses. The reason of this is that, of all the senses, sight best helps us to know things, and reveals many distinctions. Now, animals are by nature born with the power of sensation, and from this some acquire the faculty of memory, whereas others do not. Accordingly, the former are more intelligent and capable of learning than those which cannot remember. Such animals as cannot hear sounds, as the bee, and any other similar type of creature, are intelligent but cannot learn. Those only are capable of learning which possess this sense in addition to the faculty of memory. Thus the other animals live by impressions and memories and have but a small share of experience. But the human race lives also by art and reasoning. It is from memory that men acquire experience, because the numerous memories of the same thing eventually produce the effect of a single experience. Experience seems very similar to science and art, but actually it is through experience that men acquire science and art. For as Polus rightly says, experience produces art, but inexperience, chance. Art is produced when, from many notions of experience, a single universal judgment is formed with regard to like objects. To have a judgment that when Callias was suffering from this or that disease, this or that benefited him, and similarly with Socrates and various other individuals, is a matter of experience. But to judge that it benefits all persons of a certain type, considered as a class, who suffer from this or that disease, is a matter of art. It would seem that for practical purposes, experience is in no way inferior to art. Indeed, we see people of experience succeeding more than those who have theory without experience. The reason for this is that experience is knowledge of particulars, but art is knowledge of universals. And actions and the effects produced are all concerned with the particular. For it is not humanity that the physician cures, except incidentally, but Callias or Socrates or some other person, similarly named, who is a human as well. So if a person has theory without experience, and knows the universal but does not know the particular contained in it, he will often fail in his treatment, for it is the particular that must be treated. Nevertheless, we consider that knowledge and proficiency belong to art rather than to experience, and we assume that artists are wiser than men of mere experience, which implies that in all cases wisdom depends rather upon knowledge. And this is because the former know the cause, whereas the latter do not. For the experienced know the fact, but not the wherefore, but the artists know the wherefore and the cause. For the same reason, we consider that the master craftsmen in every profession are more estimable and know more and are wiser than the artisans, because they know the reasons of the things which are done. But we think that the artisans, like certain inanimate objects, do things, but without knowing what they are doing, as for instance, fire burns. Only whereas inanimate objects perform all their actions in virtue of a certain natural quality, artisans perform theirs through habit. Thus the master craftsmen are superior in wisdom, not because they can do things, but because they possess a theory and know the causes. In general, the sign of knowledge or ignorance is the ability to teach the knowledge, and for this reason we hold that art, rather than experience, is scientific knowledge. For the artists can teach, but the others cannot. Further, we do not consider any of the senses to be wisdom. They are indeed our chief sources of knowledge about particulars, but they do not tell us the reason for anything, as for example why fire is hot, but only that it is hot. It is therefore probable that, at first, the inventor of any art which went further than the ordinary sensations was admired by his fellow men, not merely because some of his inventions were useful, but as being a wise and superior person. And as more and more arts were discovered, some relating to the necessities and some to the pastimes of life, the inventors of the latter were always considered wiser than those of the former, because their branches of knowledge did not aim at utility. Hence, when all the discoveries of this kind were fully developed, the sciences which relate neither to pleasure nor yet to the necessities of life were invented, and first in those places where men had leisure. Thus the mathematical sciences originated in the region of Egypt, because there the priestly class was allowed leisure. The difference between art and science and the other kindred mental activities has been stated in the Ethics. The reason for our present discussion is that it is generally assumed that what is called wisdom is concerned with the primary causes and principles, so that, as has been already stated, the man of experience is held to be wiser than the mere possessors of any power of sensation, the artist than the man of experience, the master craftsman than the artisan, and the speculative sciences to be more learned than the productive. Thus it is clear that wisdom is knowledge of certain principles and causes. Since we are investigating this kind of knowledge, we must consider what these causes and principles are, whose knowledge is wisdom. Perhaps it will be clearer if we take the opinions which we hold about the wise man. We consider first, then, that the wise man knows all things, so far as it is possible, without having knowledge of every one of them individually. Next, that the wise man is he who can comprehend difficult things, such as are not easy for human comprehension, for sense perception, being common to all, is easy, and has nothing to do with wisdom. And further, that in every branch of knowledge a man is wiser in proportion as he is more accurately informed and better able to expound the causes. Again, among the sciences we consider that that science which is desirable in itself and for the sake of knowledge is more nearly wisdom than that which is desirable for its results, and that the superior is more nearly wisdom than the subsidiary. For the wise man should give orders, not receive them. Nor should he obey others, but the less wise should obey him. Such in kind and in number are the opinions which we hold with regard to wisdom and the wise. Of the qualities there described, the knowledge of everything must necessarily belong to him who in the highest degree possesses knowledge of the universal, because he knows in a sense all the particulars which it comprises. These things, namely the most universal, are perhaps the hardest for man to grasp, because they are furthest removed from the senses. Again, the most exact of the sciences are those which are most concerned with the first principles, for those which are based on fewer principles are more exact than those which include additional principles. For example, arithmetic is more exact than geometry. Moreover, the science which investigates causes is more instructive than one which does not, for it is those who tell us the causes of any particular thing who instruct us. Moreover, knowledge and understanding, which are desirable for their own sake, are most attainable in the knowledge of that which is most knowable. For the person who desires knowledge for its own sake will most desire the most perfect knowledge, and this is the knowledge of the most knowable, and the things which are most knowable are first principles and causes. For it is through these and from these that other things come to be known, and not these through the particulars which fall under them. And that science is supreme and superior to the subsidiary, which knows for what end each action is to be done, that is, the good in each particular case, and in general the highest good in the whole of nature. Thus, as a result of all the above considerations, the term which we are investigating falls under the same science, which must speculate about first principles and causes. For the good, that is, the end, is one of the causes. That it is not a productive science is clear from a consideration of the first philosophers. It is through wonder that men now begin and originally began to philosophize. Wondering in the first place at obvious perplexities, and then by gradual progression raising questions about the greater matters too, for example, about the changes of the moon and of the sun, about the stars, and about the origin of the universe. Now he who wonders and is perplexed feels that he is ignorant. Thus the myth-lover is in a sense a philosopher, since myths are composed of wonders. Therefore, if it was to escape ignorance that men studied philosophy, it is obvious that they pursued science for the sake of knowledge, and not for any practical utility. The actual course of events bears witness to this, for speculation of this kind began with a view to recreation and pastime, at a time when practically all the necessities of life were already supplied. Clearly, then, it is for no extrinsic advantage that we seek this knowledge. For just as we call a man independent who exists for himself and not for another, So we call this the only independent science, since it alone exists for itself. This is Michael Kramer for ListenToGenius.com. Thank you for listening. This audio program is copyrighted by Redwood Audiobooks. Permission is granted to download for personal use only, not for distribution or commercial use.